Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my ranking for all of the episodes from the new Twilight Zone reboot. Alright, so with the new Twilight Zone Season 1 officially ending this week, just a couple days ago, I thought it'd be fun to put together a ranking of all of the episodes, all 10 episodes from Season 1. And, we'll go through. So I'll give a brief kind of overview or kind of thoughts, I guess, on each episode and kind of where I put them in this list, and try to give some reasoning for that as well. Of course, this is going to be a very subjective list, so it's probably not going to be the same as yours. And with 10, things to rank here, we got a lot of kind of variety here and choice. And so I'm sure that you guys will have different thoughts, and that's why I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and your guys' ranking in the comments. And if you don't have time to give me, a top 10 list, all fleshed out with reasons and all that, I just like to get some of your favorites, or your least favorites of the season, and what do you think of the season overall, right? How does this work as a reboot for the Twilight Zone? Does it capture that original series vibe, or does it provide something new that is still entertaining and interesting to you? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts overall of the season and the episodes. But without any further ado then, let's get into number 10. Alright, so at number 10 to start off, the worst episode of the season for me was episode 8, Point of Origin. So this one was starring Ginnifer Goodwin from Once Upon a Time, and I think she did give a good performance with this one. I don't think that was at all the problem. Again, kind of the problem with a lot of these episodes, to be honest, was the writing in this one. I felt like the social commentary aspect that they were trying to get at here with the immigration issue and illegal immigration issue more specifically, overshadowed the plot and the story, and at times it just felt really messy and rushed in terms of the writing and even the directing. At times it just seemed kind of over the top a little bit, where they didn't really need to take it there. And the sci-fi element in here, they were trying to make it work, but it didn't really work with what they were trying to line up and the metaphors that they were trying to build here. So this episode ultimately was just very messy, and it just really didn't work as a Twilight Zone episode. But I did understand, like a lot of these episodes, where they were trying to go with it, and it was just a little bit frustrating to see the end product. But anyways, those are my thoughts on episode 8, which is the worst episode of the season for me. Alright, so next at number 9, we have episode 10, Blurry Man. So I gotta give them credit for this episode. So this one was starring Zazie Beetz. Seth Rogen, I guess, made a cameo. Another actress from Get Out was also in it as well. So this one, obviously a meta episode, right? A meta fiction episode. And they really kind of broke the fourth wall in this one, went kind of unorthodox, or, just kind of a different episode, I guess, right? An unconventional episode. But to me, it just wasn't executed that well. I felt like a lot of this episode was very cliche, a lot of horror tropes in this one, where it just really got repetitive. I understood kind of the message they were trying to get at, paying homage to the original series, but also the other episodes of this season, right? Showing the set pieces and all that stuff. Kind of nodding to those other aspects of the show, and also what they were trying to tackle with that imagination versus reality, entertainment versus art, and what different people see in the Twilight Zone and what it's supposed to be. And I got the messaging, I just don't think they played it out very well, and I think this episode could have been done in a conventional way and actually get Seth Rogen to do a Twilight Zone episode and do it conventionally, and I felt like that would have worked really, really well. Just this one didn't, and the ending really brought me out of it, and I think that was the worst part of it for me, with the CGI Rod Serling to convey their message that they're trying to get at. They use Rod Serling to do it, and it's a voice actor, it's CGI, so I don't know, I didn't really like that at all. I felt like if the episode ended before that sequence, this may actually be higher on my list, but that ending really deteriorated for me, and it seems kind of all over the place. This episode didn't really fit, and I really didn't enjoy the ending for this one. So anyways, that makes it then number 9 on my list. All right, so next at number 8, we have episode 4, A Traveler. This is probably the most disappointing episode. Not the worst in my opinion, but the most disappointing. This one, going into it, we have Greg Kinnear, Steven Yeun starring in this one, and I was really looking forward to this episode. Everything that the teaser showed us, even the first half of this episode, I actually really liked. But I could not get past the major plot holes within this episode, especially towards the end. The writing here was just all over the place, and I felt like this one too was very tonally challenged. 3 or 4 different tones that they were going for, and it seemed like they never really tapped into the right one, or any of them really. They kind of proposed these different themes and stories all at once, right? And they kind of ran all the way through the episode, and then the ending never really encompassed any of that. And the whole ending with the alien being revealed and them having, pie at the end was very contradicting, the actual seriousness nature of, them going to this power grid and a very serious dramatic scene. And then we see them eating pie with, at the very end with the alien and Yuka's brother. So it just really kind of fell all over the place with this episode. And again, the first half I thought was actually pretty good, and I was really getting into it. And then the last, I would say 20 minutes of this one, which was also too long, but the last 20 minutes of this episode really, really just fell off the rails to me, and was just so disappointing because they had some great cast members in this outside of Greg Kinnear and Steven Yeun as well. And they had cool themes that they were tackling, the aliens and all that stuff. Not a very original one, but still intriguing. And I just felt like it was all wasted with the writing towards the end of the episode. So that is why it is number 8 on my list. All right, so next is number 7, which is going to be episode 7, Not All Men. This episode had the best big name cast, I think the best acted episode of any of the 10, to be honest. You had Luke Kirby, Ike Barinholtz, Rhea Seehorn, and Taissa Farmiga. So 4 really great names and really notable names too. So they got a lot of talent for this one. And this is another episode where I felt similar to Point of Origin, where the commentary really, kind of overshadowed the plot and the actual story of this episode. And again, speaking back to the kind of the tonally challenge of A Traveler, this one very similar. I mean, the tone at the very beginning, the scenes with Ike Barinholtz as the husband, that scene, and then they just go downtown and, these men are acting like, caricatures, not characters. And it just really brings you out of it. It's almost laughable, right? It's almost a comedy. And even some of the lines from Taissa Farmiga and Rhea Seehorn in that sequence are kind of funny, right? And it's really hard to tell what tone they're going for. And then that ending where they really went serious with it, and the whole idea that it was a placebo really broke down the entire episode, really. Like, the whole story of the episode, the whole plot, just completely deteriorated because of that ending and that twist, I guess, that they called it, which wasn't that surprising if you were following with it. I wouldn't really call that a twist. So anyways, and there was some other stuff that really just didn't make sense in this one, in terms of, the men becoming these uber aggressive people, and they made it so it was like a choice, right? It was a choice that they could do this or not, and that certain characters didn't, and just really kind of all over the place tone wise in this one. I felt like this one, I said this in my review as well, but it could have been better as a It's a Good Life episode, whereas they kind of just show us this world, for a few, for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, right? Like that original episode of season 3. And that's it, right? They show us that episode and then they come out. There's no lesson. There's no kind of twist ending. That's just what it is. And I feel like that episode would have actually worked well. And I liked what they did with the sci-fi element of things. But again, that ending completely brought you out of it and almost deteriorated the entire story for the episode. So yes, the cast was great. The performances they gave were really great as well. But the commentary, the social commentary, was definitely prioritized over the plot and story and really hurt it as a result. So that's why it is number 7 on my list. All right, so next we have number 6, which is episode 3 replay. So this episode, of course, not very subtle. This one stars Sanaa Lathan, Damson Idris, and Glenn Fleshler, who I thought all gave great performances. I think this was one of the best acted episodes, probably along with Not All Men. Maybe these two are the best acted episodes, I would say, of the season, but obviously not much subtlety with this one, right? They really kind of went on the nose with this one, with the social commentary aspect of it. And again, setting up those metaphors where it really kind of overshadowed the ultimate plot and story of the episode. Whereas I felt like the sci-fi element, the replay element, if you will, with the video camera, actually played really well with the, I would say, first half or first 2/3 of the episode. But that ending where it really just kind of turns totally unrealistic even, and they kind of go through this underground railroad. It's a symbolization, but then they actually show them going like in an underground cave, and it's like, well, is that realistic? Where the rest of the episode, they're trying to make us kind of believe that with this replay, with this camera, that these things are happening, and it's kind of a serious episode. And so to me, again, maybe tone deaf a little bit towards the ending of the episode. Like I said, good performances all around, and I thought Glenn Fleshler did an amazing job at making us kind of hate his character even more. So that was great. But yeah, the ending, it was just social commentary over plot and story. And, again, the symbolization was pretty good in that. The sci-fi element is okay. But I just felt like the ending really, again, deteriorated this one. And the twist, it wasn't really that effective. You could kind of see that coming, and it was a logical kind of conclusion to it. But anyways, that episode is what it is. It's not a bad episode. It is number 6 on this list, but it's definitely not the worst episode. Don't get me wrong. I actually really enjoyed, I would say, the first 2/3 of it. I thought it was very good in that aspect. But again, similar to a lot of these episodes, the ending really did ruin it for me. But anyways, that is why it is number 6 on this list. All right, next is number 5 on the list. So we're getting kind of into the top 5 episodes of the season. This one is episode 6, 6 Degrees of Freedom for me. I know this is probably going to be at the top of quite a few people's lists. And this one I felt like was one of the only episodes, really, I guess towards the end at least of the season, where they didn't kind of go with on-the-nose social commentary and messaging with this one. It was more of a submersive sci-fi piece, really. And to me, that's really one of the main problems of this episode, is that it's an entertaining piece of sci-fi thriller, but it's not really the Twilight Zone. I just felt like, and a lot of people compare this to an Outer Limits episode too, and I have to agree. I mean, I just don't think this was really a Twilight Zone episode. Yes, it was entertaining. Yes, it had some really great sci-fi elements in it. A little bit of a thriller as well, with the ending sequence kind of playing out there. But the pacing was kind of all over the place for this one as well. It was very slow episode towards the middle, but the beginning and the end were like really fast paced, really, a ton of stuff happened, a lot of action. And I just felt like, again, if this episode was about I believe it was like 50 minutes long, this one, if this was a 25 to 30 minute episode, it may have worked really, really well. And again, I think the ensemble cast did really great. Jefferson White was probably my favorite in it, because his character is probably the biggest character in it as well. But I felt like the ensemble cast for this episode, not any really notable big names, but they all did a really great job in this one. Also, the ending didn't quite land for me. I've seen some people who love the ending, and that's totally understandable. But to me, the ending was just, it was kind of lackluster. It kind of left something to be desired. And again, maybe foreseeable. Maybe you can predict that the aliens were watching them, I guess, on their way to Mars. But it is an interesting episode nonetheless. Entertaining. It's a, sci-fi thriller. For those of you, tuning into Twilight Zone mainly for sci-fi, I guess, would really enjoy this episode. So I can definitely see why this would be at some people's top of their list. But for me, it's just right around the middle. I think it's a good episode. It's not really Twilight Zone, and it has some problems, but ultimately not a bad episode overall. All right, up next we have number 4, which is episode 5, The Wonderkind. I thought this was one of the more Twilight Zone like or Twilight Zone esque episodes of the season. I just felt like the kind of overall moral lesson was very clear in this one, and what they were trying to go from point A to point B, right, the beginning to the end, was actually really clear and really played out really well. In kind of, I thought it was, be careful kind of what you wish for, or you live in a world of your own desire, I guess, right? Or you kind of have to suffer those consequences of your actions, and that's exactly what happens to John Cho's character in this one. John Cho and Jacob Tremblay both gave great performances in this episode, and I think Jacob Tremblay is maybe the best child actor or teenage actor that's in projects right now. I think he's really great, and he was really great in this one. So obviously this one is commenting on Donald Trump and that whole thing, but I think if you also get past the ridiculousness of this episode, a little bit cringe-inducing at times with the Jacob Tremblay character, and you kind of get past the underlying tones of that Trump stuff, I think this episode is actually quite entertaining, and again, I think it works really well as a Twilight Zone episode with a focused theme in this one. Kind of lack of subtlety as well. I mean, the scene where they're in the mini golf course or whatever, I think that's also, maybe a little bit too far in terms of, prioritizing the commentary and the messaging over the actual plot and story of the episode. But anyways, it is what it is, and I thought the ending, again, was very satisfying in, playing through that theme and that message of the entire episode for John Cho's character. So, to me, yes, again, it does have its problems. I don't think any episode of the season was perfect, but I do think it was one of the more Twilight Zone-like episodes of the season, and I felt like it actually wasn't not bad of an episode. I also like that it made some nods to It's a Good Life, where that's kind of based on it, but it was very loosely based in this episode. But I did like those nods to that original season 3 episode, right from the original series. So, anyways, overall, not a bad episode. I wouldn't say great, but it's a good episode. I actually I found it pretty enjoyable, and that's why it's number 4 on my list. Alright, next on the list is number 3. We're in the top 3 now, and this one is going to be episode 1, which was The Comedian. So, I felt like this actually was the most Twilight Zone-like, or most Twilight Zone-esque episode, with a good lesson/theme intertwined with the sci-fi element. And I felt like, again, it was maybe repetitive a little bit, though, kind of predictable, but it was actually a satisfying twist to me at the very end. Like I said, predictable, but I think it still worked. And obviously, I feel like this episode was way too long, though. Around 55 minutes it came in at, which was way too long for this episode. Again, I think if you cut this down to about 30 minutes, this may have been the best episode of the season. It was really great. Kumail Nanjiani, of course, gives a great performance. Tracy Morgan making a cameo in this one does awesome as well. So obviously it had a couple of those problems, but I feel like the overall lesson of this one, it wasn't very social commentary heavy. Of course, they make reference to that Second Amendment stuff at the very beginning, but other than that, there wasn't much, social commentary, political commentary, if you will, in this episode. And I just felt like it worked really, really well. Again, Kumail Nanjiani gave great performance, and you really kind of buy into that character. And I felt like maybe this episode gave the best character development of any of the episodes for any of the characters. I just feel like this one was definitely one of the best episodes of the season, and it's really unfortunate that it was the first one. I mean, you expect a show to kind of get better with time, but this one actually got worse as it went on, in my opinion, or at least that's the way this ranking list goes for me. So, again, kind of a good episode, and now looking back at it, I think I appreciate it a little bit more. But anyways, number 3 then on the list is The Comedian. Alright, so number 2 on my list is going to be Episode 9, The Blue Scorpion. So, this one I felt like was the best performance of the season given by any cast or cast member, actor, actress, right? Chris O'Dowd, he gave a great performance in this one. Obviously, he's kind of known for that comedic relief, that humor, that he does so great at in shows like Get Shorty that are on right now. But he also does a really great serious performance in this one, or dramatic performance. And I just felt like this character, again, really well developed, and I really enjoyed his performance in this one. I will say, though, in this episode, kind of a confusing message/theme, but I think that can be interpreted both ways. I think whoever is watching this episode can see it in different ways. Obviously, they're kind of providing some commentary on guns, right, and kind of the gun debate in the U.S. and but I feel like if depending on your perspective on that, I think you will see this episode in two different ways. And they kind of make or they kind of aid the pro gun argument while also kind of the message of the episode, though, that Jordan Peele at least says at the end is kind of an anti-gun message. So it is definitely a confusing one, but again, I think that can be a good thing. Finally, they give us some subtlety with this one instead of this on the nose, right in your face. This is what we tried to do. This is, what we think on this one. It's kind of a leave it open for interpretation. This could be what the gun was used for, but we also kind of think that, guns shouldn't be valued over lives, and that's what's happening right now. So, again, I like that. The great mystery and suspense in this one. Really great. Probably the best at that out of any of the episodes. Really kind of, sitting on the edge of my seat for most of this episode, wondering what the hell is going to happen next. Because we see this gun fire on its own very early in the episode, and when it does later in the episode, kind of at the climax of the episode, again, a little predictable, but I thought it was still very, intense scene there, and I felt like they really made some great moments in this episode that gave an opportunity for that as well, going along with the hallucination scenes and all that stuff. So, and I just really liked the fact that they were able to base this episode off an object or thing, and I felt like they did that in the original series quite a few times with stuff, and I just feel like those episodes really work well, kind of this mythology and lore around this gun. So it right off the bat kind of gets you into it and gets you intrigued about what this gun is, why it, fell into his hands and all this stuff. So I really do enjoy this episode, and for sure, I think it's the second best on this list, but I think it's one of the best of the new reboot for sure. So anyways, the Blue Scorpion then at number 2. Alright, so number 1 on this list then, as you probably already guessed, is episode 2, Nightmare at 30,000 feet. So, of course, this is remaking the original episode, Nightmare at 20,000 feet, although the only similarities here are really the title and that they're based on a plane. I mean, really, right, there's a few Easter eggs and kind of nods to the original, including the monster, washing up on the beach at the very end of the episode, but outside of that, that's really the only things they have in common, right? So they kind of base this one in current times more like, and they use a podcast with a kind of new technology feel to it to influence the character in this one, whereas they use kind of the monster on the wing in the original, right? So I felt like this episode was very entertaining, kind of full of twists and turns, mystery and suspense episode where you kind of knew what was going to happen. You knew the plane was going to go down, but you kind of were trying to piece together as the episode went on, as was the character played by Adam Scott in this one, was how is it going to happen, right? Or how can I prevent this? And so I just felt like it was really, really great and kind of placing us in his shoes too by only focusing on him for the majority of this episode. Also, less on the nose, kind of in your face type of dialogue and writing in this episode, which I've really kind of felt like was one of the main problems with a lot of these episodes, with basically prioritizing that, as I said before, the social commentary over the plot and story of the episode, where I feel like this episode did not suffer from that issue. I feel like they did kind of avoid that stuff for the most part. Also, a shorter episode. I believe the only shorter episode of the season was Blurry Man, and maybe this one's even shorter than that one, but I felt like it was good. I think this one could have even been toned down by 5 minutes, and it still would have been even better. Of course, I think some people have a problem with the ending of the episode and it kind of making sense with the rest of it. And I kind of agree. I think it maybe would have been a better episode without that ending, right? With everyone kind of crowding around him and beating him up, right? And I think it would have worked better without that, but I think it was still satisfying, and I think it really kind of brought the message, a little bit more clarity in the ending with that one. But anyways, I think it is what it is. I think if you have a problem with the ending, I can definitely understand why you don't appreciate the episode as much or find it as, entertaining because that kind of took you out of it. But to me, I felt like it was a satisfying ending, and I did really enjoy the last twist. Though it was a little bit predictable for some, I think it was still really interesting. And like I said, the mystery and suspense building up to that point, and I felt like it really paid it off. So, number 1, the best of the season for me, is Nightmare at 30,000 feet. Alright, so that'll just about do it for my ranking of the new Twilight Zone episodes from the reboot. So, really like to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. What is your ranking of these episodes? And of course, if you don't have time to give me all 10, I'd love to hear just some of your favorites, some of your least favorites, and also what your thoughts are of the whole season, just in general, right? How did it, play out for you? And was it disappointing? Did you love it, right? It's obviously going to be a very subjective answer to that, and I'd love to hear all of your guys' thoughts, because I know some people have really enjoyed it and some people have hated it, right? It's very kind of divisive so far, the reactions that I've seen at least, and I'd, again, really like to hear what you guys think of this one. But anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy it, please do a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Would really appreciate that as well. And really like to thank you guys for all the support on my reviews. You can check those reviews out, of course, if you haven't already on the channel. I did a review for every single episode of the season, and I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on those reviews as well. What do you think of those, and what do you think of each individual episode? But anyways, guys, again, thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll see you then in my next review.